Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here. If you've not done this yet, swing by the samatters.com website and check out the virtual training that is now available. This is the easiest and most affordable way to get your members dialed in on the topics of situational awareness, high-risk decision-making, critical thinking, and resilient problem solving. I'll come to your department live via the internet and teach a drill for your members. You know, you don't have to have strong situational awareness to make a good decision. In fact, you can have terrible situational awareness and still make a great decision. We call that luck. And when you're doing things that could kill you or to kill others, I'd rather we program some of that luck out of the equation. And that's what happens when you learn about how to develop and maintain strong situational awareness in high-risk work environments. These are important skills. So if you want to improve your safety and the safety of your crew, check out the virtual training. You can learn more by clicking any of the orange boxes on the home page of SA Matters. And while you're there, if your department's interested in hosting a live event in 2018, just click the Contact Us tab at the top of the home page. All right, that's enough of the pre-show stuff. Roll that podcast intro.
Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
Hi, this is Firefighter Richard Marcus from the New Hartford Volunteer Fire Department, and you're listening to Dr. Richard Gasaway on SA Matters Radio, helping us see the bad things coming in time to avoid the bad outcomes.
Hello and welcome to episode 197 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. Did you know I've been sharing the message of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making in live programs now for 12 years and have trained over 62,000 students, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, aviation workers, and more. Really, this message is for anyone who works in an environment that is high risk and high consequence. I'm dedicated to improving your safety and your survival and sharing a message to accomplish the most important goal of all, and that's to go home to the ones who love you. And speaking of sharing the message, today I'm coming to you from Michigan, where I'm delivering 2 situational awareness programs hosted by the St. Louis Area Fire Department and the Portage Fire Department. Thank you to Bill Cody and to Mike Korfman for your passion to bring this valuable topic to each of your departments and to your region. One of the questions I get asked a lot by readers of the blog and listeners to the podcast are, when are you coming to my area, or where are you going to be next? Great questions, and the answers are really easy to find out. I've created a link on the homepage of the website for upcoming events. Just click on that blue box on the right side of the homepage, and you'll see where all the programs are upcoming. Here's something else you might want to know. If you're interested in hosting a program and want to save some money, you can be a companion program. Just join on to an existing program. That's what's happening here in Michigan. I scheduled the program with St. Louis Area Fire Department about a year ago, and then Portage Fire Department came on as a companion. So the cost of their program is about 20% less because of the savings on travel expenses. And if you're interested in being a companion, just reach out and let me know, and we'll get you set up with a good deal. In today's episode, it's part 2 of a 2-part interview I had with Assistant Fire Chief Jason Bonney of the Central Jackson Fire Protection District. Jason is working on a research paper for the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer program that he's enrolled in. During this podcast, we discuss the focus of his research and address some of his questions about the role of training and the development and proficiency of firefighters and developing expert knowledge. If you missed part 1, you may want to go back and listen to episode 196 first. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, part 2 of my interview with Central Jackson Fire Protection District Assistant Chief of Training, Jason Bonney.
Do you then see a correlation with your bigger departments in that maybe complacency or, because you hear and I even said it earlier, the bread and butter house fire, where you go into it, this is just a bread and butter house fire. Is there a good correlation between the two then?
Well, to ask if there's a correlation, for me as a researcher, I would have to, if I were to stick to that word and say correlation, then I'd have to see the data that allows me to truly see a measurable correlation. So if we can just take the word correlation and talk about it in a more informal sense, then the measured correlation and coefficients, set that aside and just say anecdotally, is there the potential for somebody who is in an organization that is busier with high-risk activities to have their vigilance diminished? The answer to that from my observation is I have seen that. But I've also seen in organizations that have high-frequency, high-risk events also having even a higher level of vigilance, because there are some people that just refuse to allow themselves to become complacent and allow them to let their guard down. But I think this vigilance and complacency can impact somebody regardless of the size of their organization and the frequency of the occurrence of the events, because it's really their mindset of how vulnerable they see themselves being to having a bad outcome. Whether that's your first house fire of the year and it's September, or whether it's your 7th house fire this month, I think it's a matter of your mindset and what can help to make that mindset, I don't know what the word would be that I would be choosing, to help you have a better mindset about the potential for bad outcomes. I think becoming a student of near-miss reports and a student of casualty reports allows us to stay up close and personal to those who maybe have not been as fortunate as we have if we've been on a lot of incidents and not had near misses or injury events at our calls, to stay in touch with those who have. Maybe we're not having them because we have a higher skill set. Maybe we're not having them because we've just been luckier. And maybe being connected with those who have had those things happen and keeping in our mind that when we read them, don't read them as though those people are less trained, less experienced, less professional. Read that from the perspective that maybe they're highly trained and highly experienced and highly professional, but they still had a bad outcome, and learn from that and take that mindset. This could happen to me. Hasn't happened to me yet, but this thing that happened, like those who go back and listen to my podcasts of the near misses of the people that I've interviewed, I hope they don't listen to those near misses and say, well, that sorry sap should have known better. I hope they listen to those near misses and say, my goodness, something like that could happen in my department too. It could happen to me. It could happen to me today. Within an hour of listening to this show, I could go out on an incident and have the same potential outcome that they had. But if we learn from those other people's near misses and their casualties. It raises our vigilance to help us realize that we're not invincible. We're not bulletproof. We're as vulnerable to having bad things happen to us as they are. And this having that respect at all times for the risk that this job brings. And we can't train enough to get rid of all the risk. We can't have enough equipment to get rid of all the risk. We can't have enough budget. We can't have enough staffing to get rid of all the risk. As you know, in the class, I talked about those two kinds of risks: the assumed risk that comes along with doing the job that we just can't mitigate, and then the created risk. And what we want to try to avoid is the created risk of going beyond best practices, cheating the devil, taking shortcuts, operating in diminished vigilance, that all are precursors to having a catastrophic outcome.
But I think that's what's so amazing with your work, as well as the several other fire service leaders right now, really preaching the situational awareness, but reading the NIOSH reports and the near miss and stuff, that to even the guys that you thought were the best firefighters, these things happen to, and I think to bridge that gap of experience is where I look at how simulation, or how we learn from. So we're learning from the NIOSH reports, and maybe there's some video or something to watch that goes along with them. And I found those, but using as many different angles as possible to diminish that gap. And in your opinion, simulated training, how much of that can make up for experience?
Yeah. Well, the statement that obviously needs to be stated is nothing can replace real world, real incident experience. But if we don't have enough real world, real incident experiences to keep our skill levels, both cognitive and kinesthetic, sharp, then we really have only one alternative, and that is to create scenarios that simulate these real world events with the element of stress added in. The good news in all of this, Jason, is that the brain can be tricked. The brain has a very difficult time distinguishing between reality and vividly imagined fiction. And if you ever want to experience this for yourself, all you need to do is go to a movie, a scary movie, and sit in the audience and watch the audience. And when something scary happens on the screen, the audience screams and the audience recoils, and the audience thinks that the person with the mask and the chainsaw is going to come out into the audience and get them next. Well, that isn't going to happen. It's on a screen, but the directors are able to create a environment in our mind, a story in our mind that pulls us into the event that's on the screen. We don't think that we're sitting, if they're good at what they do, we don't think we're sitting in a chair eating popcorn. We think we're standing 15 feet away from the person who's about to get chopped up with a chainsaw from Jason with the mask on. And that's what creates that level of angst in us, is our brain has been tricked into thinking that we're there. And if we can take that same concept of how to trick the brain and bring it onto the fire ground using, for example, simulation software. So here's a tip or a trick that could help you and help maybe others that are listening. Do you have a I don't know this, I guess maybe I asked it, but I don't remember the answer when I was at the class with you guys. Do you have a burn building that you use?
Yeah.
Okay. And describe that burn building for me.
3-story metal building. Class A room on the first and second floor. It's actually a unique burn building because it's inside of another building.
Okay.
So,
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that.
yeah.
I remember seeing that when I was there. It was right next to the building where we were doing the training.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have crews that are at the burn building, one of the best things that you can do is make sure that they, in their mind, do not think they're going into a burn building, because burn buildings are made to be burned in. Burn buildings are made not to fall down. And we have to get them out of that mindset that this building, at a real fire, this building I'm going into is designed to be burned in. No, it's not. And it's built so that it isn't going to fall down. No, it's not. So by using simulation software, and there's a variety of brands out there, the one I use that I like the most is called SimsUShare. And the reason I like that one the best is it meets my two criteria, and that is that it's cheap and it's easy to use. And so what I would suggest that somebody in training does is they take this simulation software that you can get put onto an iPad and go around to buildings in your town and snap photographs of buildings in your towns, side A, side B, side C, side D, and then use the simulation software to set that building on fire. Smoke and fire conditions, and you can create fire conditions that can simulate then the building weakening under the stress of fire. Then when you're out on the training ground and your officer is going to do a size up, they don't size up the burn building, that metal building designed to be burned in that's never going to fall down and has the same construction every time. They size up the simulated fire that you've created. And here's your fire conditions on side A. Let's walk over. They're going to walk around. Let's walk to side B. And we're going to have them do 360s on every evolution, every time, always, at a training scenario, always, every time, always, to develop the habit of doing a 360 size up. Side 2, here's your visual observation. Side 3, here's your visual observation. Side 4, here's your visual observation. And then they get to assess those conditions, which is going to show them something very different than the burn building burning, because you can create smoke conditions that would be maybe pre-flashover, heavy, thick, black, angry smoke conditions that they're not going to see at the burn building. You can create a weakening, the envisionment of a weakening structure, slow-moving fire, fast-moving fire, slow-moving smoke, fast-moving smoke. You can change the smoke color, volume, velocity, density, all that Dave Dotson things that he teaches on the art of reading smoke. Build all that into the simulation, and then have that officer make some dynamic decisions based on real fire conditions. Although simulated, it's a real building from your town with smoke that looks real, with flame conditions that look real, with concern for building construction and how the building's decomposing, which we would never have those concerns at the steel burn building. And then perhaps one of the what I would suggest that you do, Jason, is do this in three or four component parts with your officers. So the first simulation you give them is what I would call the easy solution, the low-hanging fruit, the obvious action is going to jump out at them. It's a small fire, light smoke. What you want to do is have them size it up, describe for you the building construction, the smoke condition, and have them make a decision, go or no go. Because it's the easy one, they're going to say go. Say, what size hose line? They say 1 3/4. And you have them and their crew take an 1 3/4 line inside. Then you give them one that is maybe the same building, but you've changed the scenario now, and the fire condition is a little more complex. Heavy, thicker, blacker, angrier, faster moving smoke coming out of maybe several locations instead of just one location. You show them all four sides. Ask them, is this fire different from the first? Yeah. Describe to me how. Have them describe the differences. Do you have concerns different from this fire than you did from the first one? Oh, yeah, I do. Well, what's your concern? Well, this fire looks like it could be heading in the direction of a flashover, where the first one seemed like a incipient beginning stage fire. Okay, good. Glad they made that observation on their own. Then you'd ask them, go or no go. They get to make the decision, not the instructor. The officer makes the decision. And maybe they say go. Okay, what size hose line would you take? Maybe this time they say a 2.5. Or they might even say we'd knock it down from the outside first to kind of cool it, and then we'd go in. So whatever decision they make, so long as fundamentally it's a sound decision, you let that decision then drive the action. So if his decision is 2.5-inch line, knock it down from the outside first, then make interior attack, that's exactly what the crew does. The decision and the actions marry up. So then you give them the third scenario. The third scenario, much more advanced than the second scenario, still heavy, thick, black, angry smoke, hot, turbulent, but the flame conditions now are strong indicators that the components of construction are being weakened under the stress of that fire. So you walk them around side 1, 2, 3, 4, and say, is this fire different from the second? Yes, it is. Well, tell me how. And they say, well, we've got flames through the roof. Well, what's your concern there? The building is weakened. So you think there's a potential for collapse? Yes, I do. So what do you think you should do? Go or no go? And maybe they say, no go. No go? Yeah, no go. Well, Jason, just think for yourself for a moment. How many times at the burn building has your officer ever made a no-go decision at the burn building?
Yeah, never.
Yeah,
Never.
right? Right. So now they're seeing smoke conditions they've never seen, fire conditions they've never seen, seeing dynamic 360 assessments that they've never done at the burn building, and they might be making a no-go decision, which they probably haven't done in training either. If we want officers to be able to make high-quality go or no-go decisions at real fires, then we have to create scenarios that allow them to make high-quality, high-fidelity go and no-go decisions in training with stress as well. So like maybe one of the stressors is they come back around the front after they've done that 360 and seen the simulation, and they come back around the front and there's their crew with the hose line pulled. The irons are ready. The thermal imager is ready. They're ready to go. They're just waiting for you to catch up with them. And they're like, you come back around. They're like, okay, let's go. And then that officer has to tell that crew, no, this is no-go. No-go? What do you mean no-go? You know what's going to happen. The person with the hose is going to spray the officer with the hose. The one with the irons is going to beat him with the irons. One of the imagers is going to put the imager on them until their body's cold. Then they're going to stomp on them on their way into the building because they want to go. We're here to train. We're here to put out fire. We're here to do the fun, hands-on, sexy kind of stuff. We're not here to do that knock it down, fight it from the outside, no-go kind of stuff. So if you can anticipate, whether we laugh about it, if you can anticipate the potential that some kind of pushback like that might happen, that's a stress event. So teaching that officer how to manage through that stress event, how to have that difficult conversation with the crew about what no-go is, why that decision was made, and what action we're going to do in lieu of no-go, and then also have those crews train and practice how to accept a no-go decision. Because in training, they've never had to accept a no-go decision. And on real fires, we don't accept no-go decisions at real fires too. So this is can be all created with simulation, creating stressed environments, and teaching dynamic decision-making.
What I would say to go further on the no-go decision is make them play that out of what do you need to do now to play that out.
Absolutely, Jason. The actions match the decision. So, in other words, don't do this. Don't have the officer walk around and say, okay, guys, what I just saw is a scenario that's a no-go scenario. So we're going to simulate we don't go, wink, wink. Now let's advance the hose line and put this fire out. No. Don't work that way. If the decision is no-go, then you ask the officer, well, what would you do if it's no-go? And if they say, as you were leading into, well, we'd hit it with deck guns and master streams or, 2.5s from the outside. Whatever that decision is based on the fire conditions then turns into the actions of the crew. The decision gets turned into movement And that completes the process where the decision is cognitive, the action is kinesthetic. They have to marry up.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, good.
Let's say we'll get back to the questions here.
Sure.
Let's see. Well,
We've probably answered quite a few of them just in the general conversation, but
we have. That's what's got me. I got to go down a little further into the questions here.
yeah, that's all right.
In your research, your travels, and even your experience in the fire service before your retirement, are emergency services, fire departments evaluating skill proficiency, especially in regards to high risk, low frequency events? And if so, what have you seen? And if not, and I think we've discussed the impacts, but what are the potential impacts of not evaluating skill proficiency?
Yeah. So the challenge or the opportunity for us is to create scenarios, create progressively challenging scenarios. If you're inspired by our conversation that we're having here out in listener land, don't go and create scenarios and vault people into situations that they're going to fail in and then get embarrassed in and then get angry in and then blame you in and then never want to do it again because you have embarrassed them. Start out with teaching what success looks like. Teaching meaning explaining all the steps, all the pathways to success. Even if you think they might know it already, don't assume. And then have them walk through those steps while you observe them and coach them on how to be successful and let them practice and get their skill set up. And then, and only then, do we do a skill proficiency assessment. And then even when we do that, we start with, as I described to you, those three scenarios, a low-hanging fruit, simple decision-making, ensuring successful outcome, no stress scenario. And then the next scenario maybe gets incrementally a little more challenging with a tiny little bit of stress added in. And a little more challenging and a little more stress and a little more challenging and a little more stress. What I see happen, unfortunately, when somebody gets it in their mind that they want to do skill proficiency assessment, they create a scenario that is going to melt somebody down and they somehow think that's a good learning experience. It isn't. It perhaps has just the opposite effect, and you end up with people that really don't want to do that anymore because they think they become skeptical and angry because they think you set them up to fail. Spend some time setting them up for successes and let them get successful. And each time you're building complexity and stress, complexity and stress, complexity and stress, till you get them to a very high proficient level of being able to perform complex events under high degrees of stress with successful outcomes. Now, this takes a while. Listen very carefully, listeners. This takes a while. But then when you get there and they get good at that, then you actually want to build failure into your scenarios. You heard me right. You want them to fail, but not in a I got you kind of way. You're going to tell them, this next scenario that you do, no matter what you do, it isn't going to work. Everything that you can come up with as a good solution, something's going to happen and it isn't going to work. Now, this is after they've reached that high degree of competency, operating in a high degree of stress and been successful. Why would we want to build failure in then? Because, as you know, we've all said, I've learned more in life from my mistakes than the things that I've done right. And that is true. So once they get to that high degree of competency under stress and you build failure in, what you're going to do then is now, instead of teaching them the scripted solutions, now they have to become resilient problem solvers, find new and unique ways to get to success, because the standard SOP, operational ways, textbook aren't going to work. And we tell them that in advance. We're not going to surprise them. They're going to say, this, now you've reached expert level skill. The next element beyond expert level is making sure that you learn how to become a resilient problem solver in a high stress environment, which means what you're going to do, which is all the best practices, unfortunately, it just isn't going to work this scenario. And then you're going to have to figure out resiliently how to maneuver through this. And what we're going to do in the brain then, Jason, is we have all of our standard highways, all of our neural pathways to our solutions in our mind from practice. Well, it's just kind of like going down the road, and every road that we would normally go down has a roadblock. This one has construction. This one has an accident. This one's been washed out in a storm. This one has a car broke down and we can't get past it. So what we're going to have to do is back up and resiliently find a new pathway to get to our destination. And that new pathway to get to our destination is what we call learning. And we're going to learn in a high stress, high consequence, time compressed environment with changing conditions, a resilient new roadway to our outcome. Does this make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
But no, don't do this as people are learning initially. This is the culmination of learning once they achieve their highest expert level. So to wrap this around skill proficiency, try not to get hung up in evaluating skill proficiency under stress until you've developed skill proficiency under stress. And then once you can say, we've spent a lot of time developing skill proficiency under stress, then it's time to evaluate the performance. But don't get to the premature evaluation without doing all the foundational steps to set somebody up to be successful.
I like it. I've always kind of been a believer in the crawl, walk, run kind of philosophy,
right?
And training. I had to plug my phone in. I think we have hit all of the questions that I've asked. I'm incredibly interested in this topic, and I think the research that I've done just for my applied research project, one of the things I was trying to do with that is to find counter arguments of skill proficiency evaluation, or and I couldn't find anything that said don't do skill proficiency evaluation or assessments. And so I think the biggest thing I is to keep vigilant, that it's a dangerous atmosphere no matter how well trained you are or how much skill work that you do. The environments that we go into are so rapidly changing that we can't think of everything. We can't practice everything. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts that you want to add.
Yeah. So, you'd said you're looking for that counter argument for skill proficiency evaluation. The closest thing I can make for a counter argument is don't do it prematurely. Don't create a skill proficiency evaluation process without making sure that people have had ample opportunity to learn how to be proficient at the skills that you're going to evaluate. Let me just kind of take this off the fire ground, Jason, and give you an example. I had a fire department that created a promotional examination process for company officer. It might have been even for battalion chief. I don't remember. But they said that they hired a company to come in and give their people scenarios, like personnel scenarios. Like, you have an employee that comes to work and they're being rude and belligerent, or they come to work routinely tardy, or they come to work and they look disheveled and perhaps like they've been out all night, but then they came to work. And these kind of, I'm talking about, just leadership scenarios. And the person I was talking to was telling me how poorly their officers did on these scenario-based evaluations. And I asked them, I said, well, prior to having this company come in to administrate these, how much time and effort did you commit to preparing them to be successful, to giving them scenarios, to teaching them how to come up with good answers, teaching them how to maneuver through the stress and the anxiety of having these kinds of questions asked of them in the moment? What did you do to give them skill proficiency, teach them skill proficiency before you evaluate them? Or you just bring somebody in, evaluate them under the assumption that this is a natural and intuitive skill set that people should have automatically. It's not. It is. They have to be taught that and practice that and train on that the same as we would on any fireground scenario. And if you didn't do that, you set them up to fail. And you're telling me they weren't happy, they have every reason not to be happy, because you in essence you tricked them into failing. They didn't know what to expect. Shame on you. They didn't know how to respond. Shame on you. They didn't have a good skill set and good answers. Shame on you for not have taught them those things and gave them the opportunity to practice repetitively how to be successful. Imagine if you hired this proficiency company to come in and do the promotional, and they came back to you and said, we have a quandary here. Everybody did so well, it's hard to distinguish the quality of one candidate from another.
Right.
What a great, oh my gosh, we don't know which one to tell you to promote. They're all that good versus, everybody failed because they all did so miserably. You see the difference?
Yeah. You can apply that to all the facets of an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So the counter argument to skill proficiency testing or evaluation is don't do it until you know they have, till you've allowed them to learn and practice successful skill proficiency. Set them up for success and then allow them to be successful. And if they're not, coach them on how to be successful. And you might see even a different mindset toward those people who want, they might actually want to participate in a process that if they know in the end, they're not going to end up looking foolish and like a failure, but then in the end, they're actually going to have a better developed skill set without it being embarrassing or punitive.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And one of my fears was that I've heard it on the floor as well as when I was on the floor of what are they trying to get out of us? There were validations, whatever you want to call them. Are they trying to find somebody to fire or whatever? So I think it's huge that they know too that this is for success. We want everybody to be, at the top of their game. We don't want anybody to fail. If you do fail, we'll get you up there. We'll build you up there.
And one of the things you could do too, Jason, if you have those skeptics, is involve the line personnel in development of the scenarios. At the front end of this conversation, I asked you, what causes stress at a fireground? Ask them, what causes stress at a fireground, and how could we create or recreate those stressors in training scenarios so that you get a chance to practice with those same stressors present. Get their fingerprints on the design of it. It doesn't have to be designed by administrators. It could be designed from the bottom up. And if they're helping to design it, they're certainly not going to be surprised by what it contains because they helped create it.
Right. Well, I think one of the things I've heard you say in a couple of when I've listened to you is when you became a company officer, the weight that then bestowed upon you as far as that you're responsible now. You're responsible for a crew and people and lives. And that's how I felt when I got promoted to captain for sure. And then now even more so as a training chief with even more people. I take such a serious responsibility and look at like it's my job to make sure that they're prepared when they go to those different incidents, and specifically the ones that we don't do very often because that ups the ante. And so I'm glad of what you are doing as well as others in the nation, these fire service leaders, because it's helping us as training chiefs, instructors, whatever, prepare our people and think differently and create thinking firefighters, not just rote firefighters.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those kind words on my behalf and others that are trying to carry the similar messages that I carry. But really, all we do is share a message. It's people like you that have to take the message and turn it into action. We've got the easy job. It's easy for me all day long to fill your head with great ideas of what you could do this, and Jason, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, and you sit there and you take notes and you say, oh my God, I've got more. Thank you for adding more to my already long existence of a to-do list. And then you have to figure out how do I get these things, these great ideas, implemented into my organization, and a lot of that results in the need to change human behavior. And there ain't nothing easy about getting people to change their behavior. So as much as you extend the compliment to myself and others who are carrying messages like me, the greater effort here, the heavy lifting, is on your end of this conversation of being able to turn these ideas into action. And there's nothing easy about that.
Oh, I feel it.
Yeah, I bet you do. Well, thank you for allowing this interview to be recorded and to be shared with the audience. I think we had some great conversations here, and I wish you the greatest of success in the EFO program and the credential that will result in the end of that. I'm an EFO graduate as well, so I can speak with experience on the value of what that did for my career and the knowledge base that was instilled in me by being a participant, not only in the classes, but in the networking and the connections that were made. Just absolutely phenomenal. So kudos for you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you the opportunity and your willingness to be with me, especially I know you're getting ready to embark on a world tour. So I'm sure you're busy, and thank you for taking the time out of your day.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure, Jason, and best of success to you, and stay in touch and keep me informed on how the EFO is going.
All right. Well, safe travels to you.
All right. Thank you.
That concludes part 2 of my interview with Jason Bonney. Thank you, Jason, for the opportunity to contribute to your EFO Applied Research Project. I have a favor to ask of you, the listeners of this podcast show. The primary reason I launched this podcast was to give voice to those who have experienced near-miss events. The stories that have been shared with me on these episodes, and during my live events for that matter, have been nothing short of amazing and extremely educational. I'd like to get more of those lessons shared with a larger audience, but I need your help to do so. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss while on the job and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, contact me by visiting the samatters.com website and clicking on the Contact Us tab on the top of the homepage. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near-miss event could save someone else's life. That's really, really powerful. And what a wonderful gift that would be. So if you want to share your experiences, contact me. All right, as I always do, I want to take a moment to thank the companies and organizations and agencies that have hosted some great situational awareness training for their members and employees on on this topic. I do this to show my appreciation to those who put forth the effort to organize, advertise, and fund great training experiences. Recent tour stops have included the Henrico County Fire Department in Virginia, the BX Swan Lake Fire Department in Alberta, Canada, the Penticton Fire Department in Alberta, Canada, and where I am now, St. Louis, Michigan, and then tomorrow in Portage, Michigan. If you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters Tour Stop event, you can join me on February 3 in Swissvale, Pennsylvania, February 6th in Evans, Colorado, February 7 in Frisco, Colorado, February 12 to 15 in Missouri City, Texas, February 20 in Orlando, Florida, February 21 and 22 in Pipestem, West Virginia, February 27 in Austin, Texas, March 1 in Fort McMurray, Alberta, March 12 in Towson, Maryland, March 14 through 18 in Fort McMurray, Alberta, and April 2 and 3 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If you want to see the locations of all the upcoming SA Matters Tour Stop events, just head over to the website and click on that blue box on the right side of the home page. Just know that it's always changing, so check back often. If you're interested in hosting a tour event, I'm actively booking programs for the second half of 2018 and all of 2019 now. So if you think your company, agency, association, regional conference, state conference, or national conference might be interested in hosting a program, contact me through samatters.com, Contact Us tab, and we'll get something set up for you. I've got some great staff. They'll make the process really easy for you, I promise. The last time I was delivering programs in southwest Minnesota, I stopped by and visited the sponsor for this podcast show, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire is a fire truck manufacturing company that makes amazing, all-poly-bodied fire apparatus, and it's changing the industry. If you've not checked them out yet, you need to. Swing over to MidwestFire.com. That's MidwestFire.com. Anyhow, while I was there, I had a chance to sit down and talk to some of their employees about what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Let's listen in to a conversation I had with engineer Tyler LeBrun about what differentiates Midwest Fire.
So, Tyler, what differentiates the manufacturing process here at Midwest Fire as, say, compared to the competitors who build fire trucks as well? What makes you stand out in comparison?
You know, I don't really know exactly what kind of systems the other competitors have in place, but you know, the one thing that I really think that sets us apart that I've seen in the side of the manufacturing field is trying to implement and adhere to some different lean ideologies, and that being said, lean manufacturing really helps us deliver a better quality product more efficiently with less waste to the customer. And also on the other side of that, I think the team that we have here, our manufacturing team and all the people that we have, with the way we work together, the teamwork that we have, and everybody's positive attitude, and it may sound kind of cliche, but the can-do spirit that we have, I think really helps us, separate ourselves from the competition.
But I think one of the things too that I noticed when we were touring around on the shop floor is, as I looked around, I didn't see hundreds of employees. This is not a company that employs hundreds of people. It's an employee it's a company that employs a small number of employees with a great deal of dedication, and obviously that lends some to this teamwork and this sense of family that is going on here that might actually be an asset compared to a large company where an employee just might be a number.
Exactly, most definitely, and that's something that we see is all of our employees are able to work together to build these trucks, because it's not something that they're just going to sit in their station and only do their work. If they see that somebody else needs help, they're going to go over there and help them do that, help them get ahead in their part of the process so that the product can keep flowing through the manufacturing floor.
Nice, thank you. So that's really example of what separates Midwest Fire on the manufacturing side from their competitors. So check them out at MidwestFire.com.
Thank you to Midwest Fire President Sarah Atchison and all your staff for your awesome commitment to improving the safety of first responders. I really appreciate your support of my mission. Hey, if you're not part of the SA Matters community of learners yet, consider joining. There are over 50,000 people connected here through the newsletter, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to train employees to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, and by the way, it's free, here's an easy way to do it. Just get out your smartphone and text SA Matters to 22828. So where you would normally put a phone number in, just put 22828. 22828. And in the text message area, put SA Matters, all one word. Now watch out for your autocorrect to change that to something else. S as in Sam, A as in Adam, Matters. SA Matters, all one word. And then you'll get a notification to put your email in, and that'll get you the newsletter, which has featured content from the blog and the podcasts, and occasionally some special discounts on books and videos exclusively for the newsletter subscribers. It really is the best way for us to stay in contact with each other. If you don't have a phone with texting capability, just swing by the SA Matters website and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage labeled Free Membership. If you want to get connected with me on Twitter, you can follow @Rich Gasaway on Twitter. If you want to get connected with me on LinkedIn, you can search for Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. You can also watch my videos on the SA Matters TV YouTube video channel. And by the way, all of these podcasts are now on YouTube as well. So you can just listen to the podcasts right on YouTube. You can also get connected with me on Facebook by liking the SA Matters page. Finally, if you know of a company that would like to advertise their product or service on this podcast, have them contact me. We've enjoyed over 260,000 downloads of this show, and it might be a good way to get their message into the ears of our listeners. Well, that's it. Episode 197 is complete. Thank you again to Assistant Fire Chief Jason Bonney for your opportunity to discuss your EFO project. Thank you to our awesome podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all the companies and agencies and organizations that have hosted live events. Thank you to all those who have scheduled virtual training events for their members. Thank you to the more than 1,000 students enrolled in the SA Matters Online Academy. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners of this podcast show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me here today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there. And may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.